I'm Mark Dale with Families for Safer Schools, and we're here with Dr. Lynn Fox.
And as he said, I'm Dr. Lynn Fox. I've been in the field for over 30 years and started out in Southern California and then moved to Northern California. Set up 3 model programs for the federal government that were implemented in Southern California, and I continue to learn and deal with this problem. Unfortunately, it's not gotten better. It got better for a while, and then everything fell apart, and with the marijuana issues today and this medical marijuana acceptance, we're in a lot of trouble with our youth, and that's why we're here today, right?
Well, Dr. Fox, part of the problem that we have coming up is the recreational use of marijuana is being considered for 2016 in the vote. What's your take on that, and what's your concerns?
Well, once again, I'm very concerned about adolescents and our youth, so I come from that perspective. Although I think it's a bad idea for everyone. I think the drug of today is so potent compared to the past that everyone that is using it should be thinking about the ramifications from a medical perspective, really. I mean, I don't understand why you would want to use a drug that affects the immune system when you already have cancer or some other illness. And also that there are medications out there that have been approved by FDA. But I'm not going down that path right now. My expertise is an adolescent development specialist. I train teachers and have for 35 years. I've worked with kids in elementary school, regular education, special education, K through 12, and have been teaching teachers for 25 years. I was a professor at San Francisco State and San Diego State. So I'll stick with what I know best. And my huge concern is about the effects of marijuana, especially the potency today, on a developing mind, a developing body, an individual who is just learning how to be social and to interact in the world, an individual who psychologically still has a lot of things to deal with. Adolescence is a very difficult time, and how to do it in such a way that they mature versus destroy brain cells and abilities that they normally would have, but if they ingest the drugs. So I also do a lot in the area of looking at the brain and the effect on learning and maturity.
So in the world of teen culture, you have dabs, wax, vapes, and the edibles. As a specialist on brain development with adolescents, can you talk a little bit about the risk-taking behaviors that teenagers may do and why they get attracted to this?
Well, first, I want to talk a little bit about the brain, because during adolescence is the most important time in terms of the development. And there's a couple of things I think are really important and help you understand this. First of all, the brain does not fully develop till about 25 years of age. So you're not just getting through high school, you got to get them through college. And marijuana creates a very scary situation, because one of the most horrible effects, in my opinion, is that it affects the frontal lobe. And what does that mean? That means that their decision making becomes very poor. Their problem solving is very poor. And it affects their ability in other ways to learn and take in the information, to focus, to be engaged. One of the things that in the past they talked a lot about, and Dr. Gorski, who's probably one of the greatest researchers of all time, the effects of drugs, and when a young person starts using at an early age, it's called amotivational syndrome, meaning they don't have the motivation to stick with the classroom and learning, being focused, continue being on the sports team or being engaged. They become totally focused on the drug and getting that high. So that concerns me greatly, and it's something I think people need to really pay attention to. Because the problem is once they lose this important time in their life and they are engaged in the drug and that drug culture that kind of has become culturized and trendized by this medical marijuana. Well, it's medical, so it's not going to really hurt me, versus this is a drug, and it is a potent drug, and depending on how you're ingesting it, whether you're smoking it or you're eating it as an edible or you're vaping it, you know, with these masks and all that kind of stuff, you're looking at extreme potency. And what happens is, remember, this mind isn't developed yet, so the things from a psychological perspective, they're much more vulnerable to things like schizophrenia, paranoia, psychosis, and so you have to look at the whole picture. And the problem is adolescents want to belong, and they'll belong with whatever group accepts them. And one of the things is when you start going down the path with the drug use, and especially with marijuana, then you start hanging around with those kids. You start changing the kids you're working with. Your grades start going down. And you know what's really bad is that most parents don't even realize until a year or two that their kids are involved with the use of the drug. They think it's because they're adolescents, and they don't see it. So hopefully that gave you the information you wanted.
It gets written off to teenage behavior.
Yeah,
and hormones, whatever you want to consider. Inception point is something I've always been very interested in. And a lot of people in the health profession sometimes put down the term gateway. So can you address gateway a little bit and what that's about?
Well, I have probably worked with, I don't know, I know over 250,000 people. I've trained all over the United States in 35 years. But, and I've been in high schools everywhere. I've, you know, had a stepson and my nephew who was just here, watched his development and really educated them a lot on drugs and not to do it. I can't say that they never experimented, but it was short and hopefully not that good, and then they got away from it because they're both strong young men. But what happens is they start very young. As a matter of fact, about 7% of our 7th graders are addicted to either alcohol and or marijuana. And so I want to go back to gateway drugs because that's what you were talking about, because I believe it is a thing of the present. How do they use marijuana? Most of them smoke it to start, and usually they can get cigarettes first. So they get used to this half-life of nicotine, and this becomes a behavior, and they got to have it in the morning and the afternoon, and so it becomes their choice, and it's comfortable for them to go on, and they usually start there. They don't start with these higher levels of potency. So it is a gateway drug. Same with alcohol and the same with cigarettes. You ask anyone that uses another drug that we consider more potent, which it isn't. That's another misconception, is marijuana, there are forms of it, like you were just saying, that are so potent, they're more addicting than heroin and many of these other drugs. So it's not a benign substance they're putting in their body.
So when you look at the world of schools, middle school, high school, and college, especially middle school and high school, a lot of administrators don't necessarily know how to tackle this. What would you advise? What's your thoughts along that area?
Well, in the past, back in the 80s, we had drug-free school policies and programs in every single school. That was one of the good things of Ronald Reagan's era, whether you're for him or not for him. He spent billions of dollars in every single school in the United States had to have a program and a policy. So every teacher had to be educated, the psychologists were educated, the administrators were educated, and the parents were educated whenever they could. Okay, so that was wonderful because what happened is the drug use went down, and you had people working as a team to tackle the problem and to deal with difficult issues. Today, and I'm very current and very involved in the schools. As you know, I write a lot of textbooks and materials, and so I do trainings out in the field. Most of the people from administrators down, they know little or nothing about marijuana or any other drugs, and they are so concerned about core curriculum and all of that, they're focused only on the academic. And you have to realize with some of these drugs, and especially when they're using higher potency marijuana, they drop out of school. So they don't have to deal with them in the school. And in a way, they're kind of, I hate to say this, but when you have a kid that's so many problems and doesn't show up and is belligerent and all those behaviors that are so difficult to live with if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about, is it's hard to run a school, and it's hard to keep up your grade points for the whole school, and today's schools are evaluated on that. So, and if there's no money, that's the other part of it. There's no money or resources. Back in the 80s, there were billions of dollars. Today, there's little or none.
Right, right. It's funny, you mentioned the Reagans and the just say no concept. It's elegantly simple.
It is. And it worked. And people want to foo-foo it, but do you know why it became the just say no and why she did it? Because Nancy Reagan was out in the schools, and she was really into this, and is to this day. She asked the kids, she said, what should we do? What should we say? What should our slogan be? And this little boy stood up, and just as proud as anything, said, keep it simple, just say no. And that's how it came about. But I was back there. See, today, all these people can talk about it. You have to realize, once the Reagan era was over, and because it was so successful, politically, a new party came in. They want to support their own things, and drugs were not it. It also was in a good place at that point in time, but there was no maintenance, shall we say. The monies were taken away, and then the drugs got stronger, and you see where we are today. And I think we're in the worst situation we've ever been in our country.
Let's take it.
I'm trying to build to
Yeah.
because people don't have this information at all. They don't even have anything to hang it on. So I'm trying to give them something to hang it on, and then answer you. So no, well, I'm hearing what you're saying. I just got to get them there as a teacher.
You see, part of the old thinking is that it's okay if my kid smokes a joint. So can you address that a little bit?
One of the things that really disturbs me, and when I talk to youth today, is many times their parents are the ones that turned them on. And back in the 80s, it was their babysitters. Why babysitters? The babysitters would come in, and they were away from home, and they could bring their boyfriend or their girlfriend in, and then they would have a joint or two, and then the kid, 6 years old, 7 years old, 9, I'm going to tell on you unless you let me try. And then pretty soon, they're all using it together. And this is what is happening, unfortunately, in very prominent, very wealthy families. It's not just inner city, and I know a lot about inner city because I spent a lot of time working with families and schools and situations all over the United States. So you can't say it's one socioeconomic status or one culture or one race. It's happening all over. And so I personally think that we need to be into prevention. We need to be able to tell our kids to say no. And you just don't say no. No, you teach them how to go about it. And there was a huge program. It was called Here's Looking at You. And it was excellent. And what was great about it was they taught kids how to be in a situation with other kids that were peer pressure, to turn the group around and for them to exit and go do something fun. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, in many cases, the user that wanted to go use the drugs sees that he or she's over here alone, joins up with them, and they go do something else, like play pool or play a game or watch a movie or go to whatever it is that they like to do.
Today they say kids are bored a lot, and you've hit a theme in this interview about connection.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a kid feel more connected and start to do more things without the drugs?
Well, it's called alternative highs. And you get the same endorphin rush, and you get to be with your friends, because with adolescents, most important are their friends, not their parents, not their siblings. It's being a part of the group. And that's what they want to do. They like hanging. They like talking. They like not to talk. They like to do their computers and all these different things in their cell phone. But they do it together.
Yep.
And so, parents should be doing things like, hey, come on over and we'll all do this, and I'll get some pizza, but they're watching them. Parents have to set boundaries. School teachers have to set boundaries. Because adolescence, a part of adolescence, I used to walk in my class and take a piece of chalk and put it down the middle of the room. And I said, here's your job, and if you get this, you can leave. Of course, they never got to leave, but I'd say, this side of the line is unwanted pregnancies, drug addiction, dropping out of school, all that kind of thing. This side of the line is the adolescent and your job. The adolescent, as they're developing, they want to become more and more independent and learn about things, so they get closer and closer to that line.
Right.
And they start getting a toe over that line. Pretty soon they got a foot over that line, and then addictions and all these things can occur. Your job is to let them know what the boundaries are. And that's what they're really begging for. But parents and many times teachers don't know how to handle it. And they are the most thankful. If you talk to any kid that has succeeded, they will say, I knew somebody cared enough to say no, and that I'm here and I'm watching you, and I'm going to let you know when you are getting too close to that line. Now, you can try these other things over here. They're going to try certain things. That's called life, and that's setting them up to become a normal adult. They're not going to stay an adolescent or under their parents' wings the rest of their life. But there is safety and there are stupidity. And sometimes when they don't know what's on the other side, and we as adults should, we need to let them know with love and kindness and with firmness.
You are excellent. I really appreciate all your thoughts and input today. Closing comments. What would you like to share with people that you haven't shared already?
So much. I mean, just try to catch up with all the new information and the people that are out there struggling. Our hearts go out to them. And I guess what I would like to say is there is hope, there is help, and the best way to do it is to team up, collaborate, work with each part of the population, parents, teachers, specialists, experts, people that have been there before, youth that have been able to go through adolescence and say no and stay clean and sober, find out why. And another thing I think is really important, because I come from the past as well as the future, is we learn from history repeating itself. And there's a lot of information and a lot of programs that were out there that were excellent. We need to go back, save ourselves a lot of time and money, and reanalyze them, update them, and get them back out there as soon as possible. So that's a biggie. The other thing that I want to say, and it's because so many people don't really know. I'm an educator, so I don't get into all this other stuff. I just say, do you really understand that it is not the drug of the 70s and 80s? The THC is not 1 to 2%. These kids are starting smoking, a joint that is 25% THC in it. The potency is unbelievable. The kids, the amount of time that they spend using it, and how many more kids are using it, because we have made it like, oh, well, we're all voting on recreational use of this. And they learn from their models. So it's really, really important that we model what is appropriate. And we also, again, set boundaries, but in a loving way. and support them through this very difficult time in their life.
And but before we close, I think that there was a very interesting comment you made. Recreational. So what happens in, look at the marijuana industry, medicinal. So they put this word in front of it. Now it's recreational. That sounds like a lot of fun. I think I want to go out and do some recreating too.
That's right.
What's your take on that? I mean, it's really disingenuous in many ways.
First of all, it's marijuana. It's a drug. It's not even legal in the federal government's eyes. I mean, where did we get off? I personally think it's the media. I think it is the media pushing it. I think there are people, just as we had big tobacco, we have big marijuana. And we're not looking at millions of dollars, we're looking at billions of dollars. And what I guess, boy, you really got me up in arms over this. But my bottom line is that I feel like when you're addicted, you are a slave.
Yep.
You are a slave to that drug, and you will do anything for it. And I know when I have been in Los Angeles, in a place, I don't want to talk about it, but I have seen a crack cocaine house. And where the money's coming in the back room, you would not believe your eyes what people will do for the drug.
I can only imagine.
And the money, garbage bags, they're throwing away $5, $10, $20. It's only the big bills, and they're walking out. It's the same thing. I see this with marijuana. It's a huge money maker, and they don't care about our kids. They don't care about the future of America. They would love to have someone dependent on them. And we don't hear what we're talking about today in the general media. And I'm sorry, I think that is a horrible mistake, but it's true.
Dr. Lynn Fox, you're a breath of fresh air, and I really appreciate the time you spent with us today. Question is, I know that you published a book at some point in your life, and it's called Creating Drug-Free Schools and Communities. Here's the book right here. Can you please elaborate on how it came about?
It came about after 20-some years working with schools and homes and communities. And my colleague, Dr. Shirley Forbing, and I put together this book. We spent 10 years writing this book. What we tried to do is share the whole picture, looking at the various drugs and their effects, looking at how the schools can help, what parents can do, the stages of addiction so that you can intervene as quickly as possible. We deal with 4 areas. Prevention, which in my opinion is where I'm going for. Put the money where prevention is, and you will get a lot for your money in terms of kids not dropping out. Things like that. That's $1 million when you think about the lost time that a kid that's now addicted to drugs does not have for his whole life. That's a big one. So preventing the problem, early identification. Soon as you see these factors, these behaviors, to intervene. And then with young people, they addict very quickly because of all those things I was talking about. The social development, the emotional development, the intellectual development, the physiological development, and of course the brain development. And then the last area is, so get them treatment. We do not have a lot of beds for adolescents, and we have a lot of kids that need help. Phoenix House is just one facility, but we need more and more. Once again, help them get clean and sober. And then you've got to think about the last aspect, and that's relapse or aftercare, whatever you want to call it, is when the kids go back into the real world after their month treatment or whatever it takes. Sometimes it's a year, depending. But that they go back to an environment that's accepting and helps them stay clean and sober, whether it be through peer support groups and parents being well educated to know, to catch when the relapse is coming in as quickly as possible so they don't go down the same road. And once again, it's kind of simple. Kids want to belong.
Yep.
They want to do well. They want to have a good time, and they can do it without drugs.